He talked about sitting with questions about himself that he had been carrying in the back of his awareness for some years, not with drama or crisis, but with the steady, private persistence of someone who believes that if you pay attention long enough to a true thing, it will eventually become clear. "I don't have a complete answer yet," he said. "I want to be honest about that. I know what I feel. I know it's real. I know it's about you specifically, and I know it's been there long enough that I trust it. But the larger question of what that means about who I am," he paused, "I'm still figuring that out." "I know," I said. "I'm not asking you to have it figured out." "No, you're not," he said. "I'm telling you because you deserve to know exactly where I am." This was Caleb. This was the thing about him that had made me trust him from the first week. In the dormitory kitchen, at 19, he did not give you a better version of the truth to make it easier to receive. He gave you the actual truth and trusted you to handle it. "Can I tell you something?" I said, "Always," he said. "When I came out at 19, I said, the thing I was most afraid of wasn't the reaction from my family, or from strangers, or from anyone else. It was losing this. Losing you. Specifically." I looked at the coffee table. "Because you were already the most important person in my life, and I didn't know yet what you would do with it." I said, "We were fine," he said. "No," I said. "And you meant it." "And we were," looked at him. "But I want you to know that the 2 years of not saying what I felt were partly about protecting you from something you hadn't asked for, and partly about protecting this, what we have. I was more afraid of losing the friendship than I was of the feelings." He was quiet for a moment. "You should have less faith in my fragility," he said, not unkindly, with the slight warmth that meant he was moved by something and was deflecting toward lightness because he did not yet have the words for the direct response. "You're not fragile," I said. "But some truths change things even when they land well." "This one changed things," he said. "Yes," I said. "For the better," he said. I looked at him. He was looking back with the direct, certain expression that I was learning had a new layer to it now, something warmer and more personal, underneath the directness that had always been there but which I had not previously allowed myself to receive. "Yes," I said again. "For the better." Weeks that followed were genuinely complicated and genuinely good simultaneously, which is the most honest description I can offer. Caleb was, by nature and by practice, a person who moved carefully through new territory. He thought before he acted. He gathered information before he concluded. This was not hesitation for its own sake. It was the way a person with genuine respect for the weight of things operates when the weight is significant. He researched. Not in a cold or clinical way, but in the way he approached everything important thoroughly, privately, with a specific intention of understanding rather than confirming what he already thought. He read things. He thought about his own history with new eyes. He had one conversation with a friend from work who was bisexual, which he told me about afterward with the careful honesty he applied to everything. He said something useful, Caleb told me one evening, sitting at the kitchen table with tea. He said that the label matters less than the experience, that figuring out what to call it can come after figuring out what it is. "That's good advice," I said. He also said that the most important question isn't what am I, but what do I want, he said. And I know the answer to that one. I looked at him across the kitchen table. "Do you?" I said. "I want this," he said simply. "Whatever we're doing, I want to keep doing it and see where it goes. That's what I know. It's enough," I said. "That's actually everything," he nodded. Then he looked at his tea, then back at me. "I need to ask you something," he said. "Ask," I said. "Does it matter to you?" He said carefully, "What I call it. What category it fits. Whether I have a complete answer to the larger question." I thought about this seriously because it deserved a serious answer. "No," I said honestly. "What matters to me is that what you feel is real and that you're sure of it. The rest is vocabulary." I paused. The LGBTQ community has been telling people for a long time that identity doesn't require a perfect label before it's valid. You don't need a complete answer. You need a true one. He absorbed this. "A true one," he said. "Yes," I said. I said. Then I have that, he said, 3 months after the Friday night game. Caleb told his sister. He did this not because he owed anyone an explanation, but because his sister was his closest family and he had a policy. He told me of not keeping real things from the people he loved. She called him on a Sunday evening, and they talked for 2 hours. He told me afterward that she had said, among other things, that she had wondered for a while and was glad he felt ready to say it. She asked about you specifically, he said. What did you say? I asked. I said that you were the most important person in my life, and that this had been true before this, and would remain true regardless of how everything else developed, he said. And then she said that was the most Caleb way of saying I love someone she had ever heard. I laughed. He smiled the real smile, the one that changed his whole face. She wants to have us over for dinner, he said. Us, I said. Us, he confirmed. On a Saturday evening in February, 3.5 months after the game, we went for a walk along the canal that ran through the northern edge of the city. It was cold and clear. The kind of winter evening that makes a city look like a film set, all sharp edges and reflected lights. On dark water and breath visible in the cold air, we had been walking for about 20 minutes. Talking about nothing in particular with the easy rhythm we had always had. When Caleb stopped walking, I stopped beside him. He was looking at the water. The reflected lights of the city shimmered on the canal's surface, broken into long wavering lines by the slight movement of the water. I want to say something, he said.
Say it,
I said. He turned to look at me. The cold air, the reflected lights. The 6 years of accumulated history between us. Present in the air the way the history of a place is always present even when it is invisible. I've been thinking about the right words for a while, he said, and I've decided the right words are probably the simplest ones. He looked at me directly with the green-brown eyes that I had spent 6 years cataloging in wood. I was beginning to understand, spend considerably longer on, I love you. I have loved you for longer than I understood that was what it was, and I am done not saying it. The canal moved quietly beside us. Somewhere on the other bank, a pair of ducks settled onto the water. The city carried on around us, indifferent and beautiful. I looked at the man standing in front of me, the person who had been my home for 6 years before I understood that was what he was. The person who had chosen dare every single time, because he was always more comfortable with action than explanation. The person who had sat on a Friday evening and said a true thing because the time for the careful management of it had simply run out. I love you, I said. I have loved you in one form or another since approximately the 2nd week of university when you made me tea at midnight without asking if I wanted any because you could tell I needed it and you didn't need the question confirmed. He looked at me with an expression that was both surprised and not surprised at all. I remember that. Night, he said. I know you do. I said. He reached out and took my hand in the cold February air. His hand was warm the way his hands were always warm regardless of the temperature, which I had noticed 100 times and finally had no reason to be careful about noticing. Truth or dare, he said softly. Truth, I said. What do you want, he said. Right now. For the future? For all of it. I looked at him in the canal light, this person I had known for 6 years and was just beginning to know in a new way. I gave him the truest answer I had. This, I said. Just this. However long and whatever shape it takes. You are the answer to that question every time it gets asked. He tightened his hand around mine. We started walking again. Along the canal, in the cold, clear February evening, the city reflected on the water beside us, the future entirely open and entirely unafraid. He looked at me with an expression I couldn't read, which was unusual. After 6 years, I could read most of his expressions with reasonable accuracy. This one was new, or newly visible, and it made something quiet and alert wake up in the back of my awareness. Do you ever think about us differently? He asked. From how we are? The room was warm. The television was still playing something neither of us was watching. Outside, the November wind moved through the street. Defined differently, I said carefully. You know what I mean, he said. And the thing was, I did know what he meant. And he knew I knew. And we sat with that knowledge for a moment in the warm room, the artisan's sparkling water unopened between us, the Friday night holding everything very still. Yes, I said, because I had promised myself a long time ago that I would not lie to Caleb Morrison. Even when the truth was complicated, even when it cost something. He nodded slowly. He looked at the coffee table. Okay, he said quietly. Okay. I said. We sat with it. Truth or dare, he said. The game had changed, not in any visible way. We were still on opposite ends of the same couch. The same lamp throwing the same warm light, the same unwanted sparkling water on the same coffee table. But something in the quality of the air between us had shifted, the way air shifts before weather changes. You cannot see it. You can feel it in your skin. Truth or dare, he had said. Dare, I said, because something told me this was not the moment for truth. Something told me Caleb Morrison had something to do and needed me to give him the space to do it. And choosing dare was giving him that space. He was quiet for a moment. His hands rested on his knees. He was looking at the coffee table, then at the window, then at me. The green-brown eyes in the warm lamplight. I dare you, he said slowly, like someone choosing words with unusual care, to tell me what you would do. If things were different between us. I looked at him for a long moment. That's a truth disguised as a dare, I said. Yes, he said. It is, Caleb. Noah, the thing about 6 years of friendship is that you develop a language within the language. Inflections that carry whole conversations. The way a name can be a question, or an answer, or a complete sentence, depending on how it is said. He had said my name the way you say something you have been holding carefully for a long time, and are now, finally, setting down. If things were different, I said carefully, I would tell you that the 2 years I have been trying not to feel something that I feel have been the most exhausting 2 years of a friendship that has otherwise been the best thing in my life. I paused, and I would probably have told you that a long time ago instead of right now. The lamp, the window, the November wind outside. Caleb was very still. 2 years, he said. Approximately, I said. You never said anything. You were straight, I said. You are straight. I wasn't going to. I stopped. I would never have put that on you. It wasn't fair to put it on you. He looked at his hands on his knees for a moment. Something was moving across his expression that I was trying to read and could not quite get a hold of. It was not discomfort. It was not the careful diplomatic retreat of a person managing a friend who has revealed something inconvenient. It was something else. Something more interior, more personal, moving through him like weather. What if I wasn't? He said. The words landed quietly. I said, what if I wasn't? He said again. Completely. What if that wasn't the whole picture? I sat very still. Caleb, I said. My voice was careful and completely level. What are you telling me? He looked up from his hands. The green-brown eyes were direct, which they always were when he was being most honest. He had a way of going very still and very direct, simultaneously when he was saying something that mattered. I have been trying to understand something about myself for a while, he said, and I have not talked about it because I didn't have a clear enough answer to make it worth talking about. That's how I work. You know that. I don't bring something to a conversation until I know what it is. I know that, I said. I'm not sure I know what it is yet, he said, but I know it's real, and I know it's been there for longer than a while. And I know he paused, something crossing his expression that was both careful and the most unguarded. I had ever seen him. I know it's specifically about you, which makes the not knowing what it is more complicated, not less. The room was very quiet. Outside, a car passed on the street below. The November wind moved. The lamp held its warm, steady light. How long? I said. It's longer than 2 years, he said. Something in my chest did something complicated. I looked at him, really looked at him. Without the careful peripheral management I had practiced for 2 years and found him looking back in the same way, directly, without the usual conversational distances maintained. I need to ask you something. I said. Ask, he said. Are you telling me this because the game gave you a way to say it without fully saying it? I said. Or are you telling me because you actually know what you want to do with it? It was the most important question I could ask, because I knew Caleb Morrison. I knew that he was capable of being honest about a feeling before he was ready to act on it. And I needed to know which this was, because the difference mattered enormously to me. He was quiet for a moment. The specific quality of quiet that meant he was thinking rather than avoiding. Both, he said honestly. The game made it easier to start. But I'm not hiding behind the game. Pause. I wouldn't do that to you, I said. You wouldn't. We sat with that. Truth or dare, he said. His voice was quieter now. The game had become something else entirely. Not a deflection or an entertainment, but a structure that two people were using. Because sometimes a structure is what makes honesty possible. Dare, I said. For the second time, still giving him space, he looked at me for a long moment. The green-brown eyes in the warm light. 6 years of Friday nights and kitchen conversations, and the accumulated weight of a friendship that had always been. Underneath everything, the most important relationship in both our lives. I dare you, he said quietly, to kiss me. The words sat in the air between us. I did not move immediately. I looked at him at the complete directness of his expression. The absolute absence of the careful diplomatic retreat I had been bracing for subconsciously since the conversation began. He was not managing me. He was not being kind in the wrong direction. He was sitting on his end of the couch with his hands on his knees looking at me with the expression of a person who has made a clear decision and is now waiting with genuine openness to see. What the other person does with it? Caleb, I said. If I do this and it's not Noah, he said. I don't make dares I don't mean. This was true. In 6 years, it had always been true. Caleb Morrison did not say things he did not mean. It was one of the first things I had learned about him, and one of the things I had relied on most. I moved. Across the couch, the distance between us had always been the length of a couch cushion, and the length of 2 years of careful management. Now it was neither. Now it was just the small, warm space of a Friday evening in November, and two people who had been circling something true for longer than either of them had admitted until tonight. I kissed him, it was. Soft, unhurried. The kind of first kiss that is not about proving anything but about finally being in the place you have been moving toward. Slowly and without acknowledgement, for a very long time. His hand came up and rested against the side of my face, warm, steady, certain in the way his hands were always certain, and he kissed me back with the full, quiet attention of a person who is completely present in a moment. When we pulled back, the room was the same room. The lamp, the window, the November wind, the untouched bottle of sparkling water, everything else was different. Okay, he said softly. Okay. I said, that's what I thought it would be, he said. And in his voice was something I had never heard there before, not relief exactly, but the particular quality of a person who has been carrying a question for a long time and has just received an answer that fits. What did you think it would be? I asked. He looked at me with the direct green-brown eyes and said, simply and completely, right. We did not resolve everything that night, that is important to say, because stories sometimes suggest that the moment of revelation is also the moment of resolution, that the dare and the kiss and the admission are the end of the difficult part and the beginning of the easy part. Life is rarely that cooperative. What the Friday night gave us was the truth, and the truth, as it turned out, was only the beginning of a longer and more interesting conversation. We talked until almost 2 a.m. We finally opened the sparkling water, which was fine, but not worth the wait, and we sat on the couch, closer now. The careful distance retired, and we talked about the things we had been not saying with the same honesty that had always characterized the things we did say to each other. Caleb talked about the period after his second relationship ended 8 months ago and the quietness that had followed it. Not sadness exactly, more the particular clarity that comes when something ends, and in its absence, you can see more clearly what it was and was not. There is a particular kind of friendship that exists between two people who have known each other long enough to stop performing. No careful editing. No managed impressions. Just to people who have accumulated enough shared history that silence between them is comfortable and honesty is the default language. The kind of friendship where you can sit in the same room doing completely different things and feel, without either of you saying it, that this is enough, that this is actually everything. I had that friendship with Caleb Morrison for 6 years. Since the first week of university, when we ended up as accidental roommates in the worst dormitory on campus, Caleb had been my closest friend, the person I called first when something went wrong and last when something went right, because I wanted the good news to last a little longer before sharing it. The person whose laugh I could identify from 3 rooms away. The person who knew every version of me, the confident one and the scared one, and the one at 2 in the morning who sometimes sat on the kitchen floor and felt the weight of things. He was also, by every observable measure, completely straight, and I, Noah Callahan. 24 years old, openly gay since I was 19, a person who had promised himself approximately 100 times that he was not going to develop feelings for his straight best friend was in love with him, had been, if I was being completely honest with myself, for about 2 of those 6 years. This is the story of one Friday night. A bottle of sparkling water that nobody wanted to drink, a game that started as a joke, and the dare that changed everything I thought I knew about Caleb Morrison and about the 6 years we had been building something neither of us had. The right words for yet, the apartment Caleb and I shared was on the 3rd floor of a building that had more character than structural confidence, the kind of place that creative people in their mid-20s end up in, drawn by the high ceilings and the good light, then the rent that was merely unreasonable rather than impossible. We had lived together for 2 years since graduation, because when the time came to find our own separate adult lives, we had both independently arrived at the conclusion that a separate adult life without the other person in it sounded worse than just keeping things as they were. This was not discussed at length. It was simply decided, in the way that the most important decisions between close friends sometimes are, quietly, mutually, without ceremony. My name is Noah Callahan. I am a 24-year-old freelance illustrator who works from a corner of our living room that has gradually colonized approximately 40% of the available space with sketchbooks, reference prints, and a collection of houseplants that I maintain with considerably more dedication than I maintain most other things in my life. Caleb. He works in urban planning for the city council, which suits him with a precision that careers rarely achieve. He has always thought in systems, in the way that things connect and affect each other, in the invisible architecture that makes a community work or fail. He is tall, easy in the world. He's the kind of person who walks into a room and does not need it to acknowledge him because he is already comfortable in himself. Dark blonde hair, eyes that are sometimes green and sometimes more brown, depending on the light, which I have had 6 years to observe and still find impossible to describe accurately. He is warm. He is quietly funny in a way that catches you off guard. He is the kind of friend who remembers the things you mentioned once in passing and asks, about them 3 weeks later with genuine interest. He had dated 2 women in the time I had known him. Both relationships thoughtful and real, both ending without drama or bitterness. He was currently single, had been for about 8 months, and seemed neither bothered by this nor actively trying to change it. I had dated 2 men in the same period. Both good people, both relationships, ending not because anything was wrong, but because something was missing that I was not ready to name and was increasingly unable to pretend I could find elsewhere. It was a Friday evening in November. The plan had been a group, gathering 6 of us from the original university circle, converging on our apartment for the kind of low-key evening that becomes a regular institution before anyone decides it. But by 7:30, 3 people had canceled for various legitimate reasons, and one had texted to say she was on her way and then simply never arrived, which was characteristic of her and accepted by all parties, so it was just the 2 of us. As it often was, we had ordered food. We had eaten it on the couch, watching a film that neither of us was particularly invested in. The evening had the comfortable, textureless quality of a Friday night between people who have been comfortable together for a long time. At some point, Caleb disappeared into the kitchen and returned with 2 glasses and a bottle of sparkling water with a handwritten label from the farmer's market that neither of us had opened since buying it 3 weeks ago. "This is sad," he said, looking at the bottle, the water, or the evening. I asked. "The evening isn't sad," he said, dropping back onto his end of the couch. "The water is sad. We bought it for a reason, and now I can't remember what the reason was. I thought we were becoming the kind of people who drink artisan sparkling water," I said, and we are not those people." He looked at the bottle for a moment. Then he set it on the coffee table between us and looked at me with the particular expression he wore when he was about to suggest something that he had already decided was a good idea regardless of my input. "Truth or dare," he said. I looked at him. "We're 24. I said. "The game has no age limit," he said. "It absolutely has an age limit," I said. "Truth or dare?" "Noah." There was something in his expression, that particular combination of certainty and slight mischief, that I had never successfully argued with in 6 years, and was not going to start now. I looked at the bottle of artisan sparkling water. I looked at the film still playing on the television, which neither of us had been watching for at least 40 minutes. "Fine," I said. "Truth." He smiled. The green-brown eyes. The easy confidence of a person who plays games expecting to win, not because he cheats, but because he pays attention. "Ah! When did you know," he asked, "that you were gay?" "The actual moment, not the official story." I looked at him. In 6 years, we had talked about my being gay the way we talked about most things, honestly. Thoroughly, without it being a bigger deal than it was. He had been the first person I told, actually, at 19, in the dormitory kitchen at midnight. My hands shaking slightly around a mug of tea. He had said, with the directness that I had come to understand was his form of love. "Okay? Does that change anything?" And when I said no, he said, "Then we're fine. Are you okay?" And I said yes. And we were. But he had never asked me this specific question before. The actual moment, not the official story. 14, I said. My cousin's wedding. There was a man there who was a friend of the groom. He was dancing, and he was, I don't know, just fully himself, happy in his body. And I remember watching him and thinking, I want that. Not him specifically. That, whatever he had. I paused. That was the moment. Caleb was quiet for a second. "That's a good answer," he said. "It's the true answer," I said. "Those are often the same thing." He picked up the sparkling water, considered opening it, and put it back down. "Your turn. Truth or dare?" I said. "Dare," he said immediately. I looked at him. In 6 years of friendship, Caleb had always chosen dare when I asked. Not because he was reckless, but because he was the kind of person who preferred action to confession, doing to explaining. I had always chosen truth, which probably said something about both of us that would take a longer conversation to unpack. "I dare you," I said. "To call someone you've been meaning to call and haven't?" He made a face. "That's a terrible dare. It's a completely valid dare. It's the dare of someone who is playing truth or dare for the first time," he said. "It's a homework dare." "Fine," I said. "Text someone something honest that you haven't said yet." He considered this for a longer moment than I expected. Then he picked up his phone. He looked at it. He set it face down on the couch beside him. "I'll think about that one," he said. "That's not how the game works," I said. "I'm thinking," he said. "Truth or dare?" "Truth," I said.